Loma Linda, 1050 AM, K292FQ Riverside, and K293CF Moreno Valley.
Welcome to U-Turn Radio. Here at U-Turn Radio, we believe in big-hearted communities and small government. Join your hosts, Nadia Renner, Tom Murphy, and Eric Steinman, as we work to put local governments on a diet and champion the charities that support your community. So, come on, join us and let's turn it around.
Happy Sunday. Is my mic on? Does it sound like it? Yep. Are we rolling? Happy Sunday. That's what happens when we're live and direct on a Sunday. How are you, Tom?
And on this Sunday, I'm doing really well.
We Tom and I are live and direct today. We are going to have Eric calling in and joining us via telephone for this show.
Yes,
we hope. And we have a full show, very informative. Tom and I went to the board of supervisors, or the supervisors board meeting, right? Did I say that right?
Yeah, the board. Yeah.
So it was so interesting, right?
Yeah. So this is a San Bernardino County Board of Supervisors meeting held last Tuesday.
So pretty much we've covered FP5.
5 shows.
5 shows.
5 shows we've done on FP5.
And if you don't know what FP5, I recommend you go to uturnradio.com to get that information and listen to the first one so you understand what FP5 is.
Just in case there's somebody's listening who hasn't heard, FP5 is an effort by the county acting in their role as running, if you will, the fire district. They are expanding from this originally what was this 5.6 square mile area in Hellendale, where the folks in Hellendale said, we want better fire service. We're gonna impose a tax on us so we can get that. And the county essentially has leveraged that, which was like 1,000 votes.
Right.
They've leveraged that to expand that entire fire district to all of the unincorporated area of the county. It's like 19,000 square miles. It's like this huge land grab. And the frustrating thing, the infuriating thing for the citizens is this has all been done without the opportunity for a yes-no vote.
Right. So we've covered that, and you can check those out on uturnradio.com. Before we go into the details of the meeting that we attended, I definitely want to share with you guys, if you guys have a favorite charity that works out of the Inland Empire, we do what we call here Spin for Charity, and we'll be more than happy to spin. And when you send money for your favorite charity, or if you work at a charity as well, you can call in and tell us what you guys do out here. We would love to spin for you guys. It's part of the big-hearted community stuff that we like to do here at U-Turn Radio.
Absolutely. That any listener that calls in, we'll go ahead and spin the wheel, and we will donate to their favorite charity on their behalf.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about the meeting. I've never was aware of these meetings before I started working at U-Turn Radio. These meetings are held on Tuesday for most part at 10 in the morning. It's when it's open for the public, and you can pretty much attend. And depending, usually they give you the agenda gets released on a Friday, and it tells you the topics that they're going to be covering. So then they proceed and have this meeting on Tuesdays at 10 in the morning, and it's all the supervisors from the 5 different districts and get together, and also is the opportunity for citizens to go, and they have usually 3 minutes to talk about whatever topic they want to and bring it up to the supervisors, right?
Right.
So they do this, and I attended my first one, and then this was my second one that I attended, and people are very passionate, and I love to see that because I feel like when we talk about it here on U-Turn, I always before would ask myself, who's very passionate, who's really like out there speaking and giving their opinion, and this was definitely where I felt that citizens were really like sticking up and talking about how they felt about FP5.
Right. Yeah. It is interesting that, you tend to think, or I tend to think of these meetings as like boring. Why would anybody ever go to
right.
them? But if they hit a nerve, and they have with this issue, people are passionate, like you said. And it was, the size of the crowd. The first meeting you went to, what was the chamber look like? What was the crowd in the chamber?
Well, there was something going on with like some type of construction union issue.
Yeah.
And there were so many. Like there was more union workers there than like regular citizens at the second one for the supervisors. But I mean, it was a packed house. If you were there late, you did not get a chair, because before you get to these meetings, you have to get checked out, and like you have to put there's security, like a strict kind of security.
Yeah,
so right, because there's, like we said, a lot of passionate people that yell sometimes at the supervisors. So anyways, that time there was a lot of people, but I was surprised that FP5 also brought a good amount of people, because I didn't know. We covered it for so many different shows, and it doesn't just affect the citizens, but also business owners. And we have Bob Cable from the airport,
owner at Cable Airport,
right? And he also expressed, how it is for him as a business owner. So, and he was there too. I saw him. Yeah. I saw him at the supervisor meeting, which is really cool also, because it's like somebody that really talked about how it's affecting his business, or how it would affect his business, and also made it a point to go and be there and be present,
right.
Which I think it's kind of like important. If you're going to be talking about a certain issue, and if you're passionate about it, you should definitely get involved. And I think he was a great example of that.
Right. He was a great example. And in our interview with Bob, he mentioned that he actually had to hire a general manager for his business, mm-hmm. so that he could then invest all the time that he needs to deal with these type of civic issues, governmental issues that kind of come down on him as a business owner.
Right.
Yeah.
So pretty much let's talk about what the supervisors went over, because also the chief of the fire department was there. He did a presentation, and he was talking about how they sent out the letters, which we also covered on one of our shows on uturnradio.com. You can check that out. And they covered how the newsletters went out on September 14th, and that was where you were able to download. It gave you instructions on how to download the application to put in your vote. But a lot of people had issues, and we kind of mentioned that on this show, how a lot of people either weren't going to know how to download it, or didn't have the software to download it, or weren't going to know how to download it.
Right. Yeah. I'm actually going to even back up a little bit, Nadia. I'm going to kind of talk about kind of my perspective of the whole meeting, really from start to finish. And you get, if you look, if you will, from a 30,000-foot view, what happens is they go through the kind of this administrative thing, and then they vote on the consent calendar,
right,
which is usually like 60, 70 items, and basically they vote it all at once. We agree with all this stuff all at once.
Right.
And except for wonderful Barbara, I won't use her last name on the air, but Barbara, she comes every meeting and she questions them on costs that are part of the consent calendar. We at U-Turn, we love Barbara.
We definitely love Barbara. She's so sweet too. So
they finish this, and then they again, packed house, right?
Yeah.
It's packed, and we're all there for FP5. But the next thing on the agenda is one of the, I don't remember the name, but one of the folks in the county system that works for the housing, she basically is there encouraging the board to vote on a resolution to declare the county in a housing crisis. Mm-hmm. Because what it does is it gives them access to another $9.2 million of funding for this. So you have that. And then next we get public comment from business owners out in Joshua Tree.
Right.
And their issue is they are losing business. They're going to be put in a situation because of I think it's a short-term rental ordinance that the mm-hmm. county is propagating. They're going to lose business, and obviously very passionate. But so that you got this weird kind of, I guess, contradiction of one. The county bureaucracy asking for more money. We need more money.
Right,
we need more money. Right. And then you have the citizens who are out there, trying to make a living and paying their taxes. And it's like, you get less money because we're going to put another ordinance on you. And then we jump into the FP5, where it's like, this huge land grab, and there's, 20 27, I think it was $27 million worth of increased taxes that are now on the table. So you just got this system this government system that's saying, feed me, feed me, feed me. I need more money.
And from any place, like obviously Joshua Tree was one, like it's like feed me, FP5 feed me. Like it was that was almost like the theme of it all.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like keep giving me more.
Right. No, that's exactly what it is. And then you get into the FP5 where there's and you heard part of it, there's 4 hours of public comment.
Right.
And did you hear any that were like, I support this thing?
Nobody.
Not one.
Not one person.
I asked some other people that sat through the whole thing. Not one iota of support for this.
Well, even when I was
spent.
standing in line to go inside, I was talking to a little bit of the people that were waiting outside to get in, and they all also were so against it and very passionate about why they were doing that. There was a man who shared that they tried to do that in 2009 and it just didn't work out, and they keep trying to push this whole tax fee on them, and it's like it's just not working out,
Right. Yeah. And so it ends up from my perspective, it was pretty much a charade in terms of the protest process. And one way to look at that is that nobody ever said, yes, we want this to happen.
Right.
They had 15,000 respondents, and as far as we know, they were all no.
Right.
They threw out some administratively, but everything they counted was a no, and every comment they heard was a no. And yet, at the end of the day, Supervisor Hagman, I make the motion, Josie Gonzalez, Supervisor Gonzalez, I second it, and then Supervisor Ramos, he's the third, so 3-2. Supervisors Lovingood and Rutherford were against it.
Right.
Back in June, they were against again, but 3-2, 3 wins.
So that's how I almost feel like, where does the citizens' opinion matter for these supervisors, the ones that voted, the 3 of them? Like, I mean, these are your people, and you are there to represent the people of these districts, and they still went against it, obviously,
Right. Yeah, and my contention is that once you serve as a supervisor for a while, you forget who you work for. You begin to think, and I can understand it because they take a lot of abuse after watching. I mean, they get a lot of angry people yelling at them, and they have to maintain their calm, that type of thing. So, after a while, it becomes kind of a foxhole mentality where it's like, hey, I'm working with you folks in the county because everybody's kind of, slinging stuff at us, but they forget.
You brought up a great point, because at those meetings, these people yell at them and say, and they're just, I feel like they're just so angry, and I think that's why where that emotion comes. And not saying that that's the way to go about it, but I think that it's just because most of the people probably feel that they're not being heard. And it must be very frustrating, and especially for the people that are living on a certain budget, and they know that they're not going to either be able to make it or that it's going to be disrupted by this new tax fee.
Yeah, and I agree with the angst, but it's kind of one of those basic, treat somebody else the same way you would want to be treated, and that's how the interaction should go, and at times it doesn't, but. I think we're going to move on to another tax
Absolutely.
issue, right?
So then, so we wrap this up, and this brings us to another tax issue that's going on that we came across, and that's Measure Q, which is a 1% increase for sales tax. And this is mainly in Barstow, right? In the city of Barstow?
This Measure Q is itself only restricted to the city of Barstow. The reason we picked this topic is because I think it's across this great state of California. On November's ballot, there are 254, if you read the reports, 254 separate measures for cities, counties, whatever, where the governing entity, we'll say the city, the municipality, is asking for an increase in the amount that they can take from the sales tax pie, if you will. And I thought, wow, that's a lot. I wonder why. So, we care about the Inland Empire, and I kind of looked around and was like, okay, there's one out on the ballot out in Barstow. So let's look into that a little bit.
Right. So as far as like if you were to vote yes on this, from my understanding from on the ballot, it says if you vote yes, it's a vote in favor of allowing the city to impose a 1% increase in sales tax for general purposes.
Right.
That's a yes vote. If a no vote is against allowing the city to impose a 1% increase in sales taxes general purposes. So that's a no vote. So this is, like you said, it's going to be on November 6th. Right. And then out in Barstow, there was a debate with Billy Brunn and Dr. Paul Courtney, and they pretty much just shared their opinion, and it was pros and cons. And I think that this is a really good way to hear the pros and cons, so one can make their own opinion, and when they go vote, they kind of hear, two different angles and figure out what am I going to really vote for?
Yeah, as part of civil discourse, we want to hear both sides of the story. As you know, our organization, U-Turn Radio, we love big-hearted communities and we love small government. So we're obviously going to have a perspective on this, and an increase. I think it ends up being about $7 million more into the city of Barstow's coffers, if you will. But today we're going to have both sides of the position get a chance to make their argument.
Right. So let me introduce our first guest. And like I said, we got our guest they had a debate previously on September 22nd, 2018, and they did their pros and cons. So let me introduce our first guest. Her name is Billy Brunn, supports Measure Q, long history in Barstow, wants to keep local control of fire and police departments, recognize past missed issues of funds, personal story of fire department and paramedics saving her mother-in-law's life. So, Billy, welcome to U-Turn Radio.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for making time and hanging out with us. So we just gave you support Measure Q, right? And you had a debate against Dr. Paul Courtney. So also from reading a little bit of your story, personal story, fire department and paramedics saving her mother-in-law's life. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. First, I'd like to introduce myself now, since that debate, as the chairperson for Citizens in Support of a Better Barstow. We have definitely come a long way since that debate, and a lot more information has become available for us to actually support the measure. My mother-in-law lived with me for about 3 years, just over 3 years, and she's an oxygen patient, a dialysis patient, and a heart patient. I heard a yell from downstairs, and I was rattled out of my sleep, if you will, calling 911 as I'm running because I knew something was wrong. And turns out her oxygen level was very, very low. She was speaking like she was drunk, and she's not a drinker.
Right.
It was the middle of the night, and the fire department responded in right around 4 minutes. When the Captain Dinopoli was walking into the house, I was telling him I was still on the phone with the 911 dispatcher. He was already with an oxygen tank preparing it to slap it on her face, and that's exactly what he did. When we got to the hospital that night, they had told us that if it wasn't that fast of a response, she would have been brain dead.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's my story, and it goes further than that. Our community is a small community, and we're very proud Barstonians, if you will. And we know each other, we support each other, and it would be heartbreaking to lose the fire department as we know it. And that's just one aspect of Measure Q. So, but that's my story on Measure Q, and thank you for letting me share that. I love my mother-in-law dearly, and I thank our fire department for saving her.
Absolutely. So in your words, let's have you explain what Measure Q is.
Okay, Measure Q is a general 1% transaction and use tax. It is going into a general fund, which will be separate from our city government's general funds, if you will. So the 1% sales tax will support enhancing our 911 response times, our fire department, our police department, our roads and grounds, our street department, if you will, and also enhance our senior and youth activities where they participate in, like, the parks and recs and stuff like that. So the entire 1% sales tax will stay local to the citizens of Barstow. It won't go up to the state, down to the county, and then down to the city. It will completely stay 100% in Barstow. It's going to be a shared cost with millions of travelers. As we all know, Barstow, if you hit from Las Vegas to Los Angeles or vice versa, Barstow is known as a gas stop or a food stop. And so we've got outlets here where people shop. And so we're going to share that cost with our travelers, and which is a bonus to us because we share our fire department and our police department with our travelers. So that's a bonus there. And then also, it's going to require a mandatory third-party audit. So what that means to us is that when Measure Q passes, is how I like to put it.
Right.
They'll be mandatory a third-party audit. So not only will our city government and our resident oversight committee, which is also mandatory, there's a third-party audit to make sure that this money is going to go exactly to where it's intended. The resolution and ordinance is specific. It tells us exactly where we will spend the money and how it will fund our community. And the mandatory citizen oversight committee is going to be a 2-year committee. Each person that's assigned to it will serve a 2-year, and it will be their due diligence to make sure that the government is making sure that the money goes exactly where we want it to.
Do you know the current budget for the fire department right now in Barstow?
I don't have the exact numbers for the fire department. I support Measure Q not only for the fire department, for the city as a whole.
Okay.
So I know that they have about a $400,000 shortfall per year, and the city of Barstow has subsidized that at just over $4 million over the last few years.
What would be like the biggest reason why you would say, is it more like the personal story that you shared with us, or just in general, why do you support it? Why do you support Measure Q?
I support Measure Q for a lot of reasons. I'm a lifelong resident of Barstow. I've heard some stories out of Needles and a couple of other places. Needles actually went to an FP5 county fire department tax, just like how Barstow's about at risk of doing. I hear them hearing things like these guys that came in to take over our fire department don't even know our cross street. Barstow is not just the city of Barstow. The fire department actually has a district that it's responsible for, which goes further than just our city limits. If you don't know our area, you're not going to find these houses. You're not going to be able to get to these places. On top of that, I support it because I've heard that we've only have 38 sworn police officers in our area, and I just don't think that's enough. Our crime has increased lately. Over the last, I would say, 3 years, it's become really almost ridiculous, the amount of crime that we've seen and the increase. And our officers are being reactive, not proactive. Our homelessness is on the rise, just like every high desert city right now. And we're, again, being reactive, not proactive. So I support it for the police department as well. I see the downtown area needs some assistance with street cleanup and different things like that. We're limited. We've had to cut the budget. We've had to cut some staff, and we need that staff back so we can live in a prideful community. The list goes on and on. I'm a retired, if you will, manager and coach of girls softball, and I see these fields that could use a little bit of extra money to make them more playable and more friendly for out-of-towners to come and play on our fields. Measure Q will do so much for this community, and it will stay 100% local. So that's why I support the tax. More than just the fire department, it's the community at large. It's at a whole.
What would you say the benefits are like for the Barstow citizens and business owners?
Oh, the benefits definitely would be the city enhancement. It's statewide. Everybody's looking for money for public safety. Everybody's looking for money for roads and grounds, for beautifying their city. And Barstow it's not going to do it without the extra money. So I think that the business owners would profit from it because it would be more attractive. The city would look more attractive. Our police and fire services would be more attractive because we wouldn't be running on a limited staff. We would have a good amount of personnel. They've got great 5-year plans in place that they would do with this money, and it's just all positive for the business owners. Now, for the residents, public safety as we know it, if we lost it, we are a small community. We all, most of us know each other. We lean on each other, and we lean on the safety and security of our city. So I think it's a win-win for both business owners and residents.
Billy, real quick question for you. In terms of citizen oversight, at the end of the day, who is authorized, if you will, to sign the checks for that fund? Is it
Right.
Is it a city manager? How does that work?
It's going to be just like any other budget. We're going to have to adopt a budget. We're estimating $7 million, so the city will have to draw up the budget on what they would do with that estimated amount of money. The budget would have to be then approved by the city council and managed, of course, by the city manager at the discretion of the council. Now, the Citizen Oversight Committee, we would have the citizen. I say we because I'm begging to be on that committee. I'm begging to see this all the way through. Follow the money, if you will. The Citizen Oversight Committee would actually be making sure that the money was spent the way that the resolution and ordinance intended. Now, would they have any say-so or can veto power, if you will? No, they wouldn't, but they would be the noisemakers to make sure that this would be there. There's also in the ordinance that you can, if it's not being spent the way that it's intended, you can do a protest on it. You can file complaints. You can do all that. You can make your voice heard. So my stand on it is, if you're going to vote yes, or even if you're opposed to it, make some noise at the end of the day. If it's not doing exactly what it's intended to do, make the noise. And I plan on being that voice for this community.
How much do you think, as a citizen, you would spend extra if Measure Q is granted? Oh,
pennies, really. I own a very small business here in town. We do a housekeeping service, and I have a handful of kids that I've raised and grandkids. So my household, there's 4 of us here. I would say maybe 70, not counting my business, $70 a year in increased taxes. We've all kind of done a little homework. We've started collecting receipts and seeing what we're paying on a daily basis. And so we take that week and we average it out for the year. Mine came up to like $69. And we like to eat out. I'm on the go all the time, so I'm spending extra tax money and I'm supporting our local businesses. So I'm not opposed to spending $70 to $90 more a year to fund so many great things in our city. And like you guys were talking, I was listening before you guys called me back, that FP5 is coming. So there's a tax coming either way. It's either going to be a 1% tax or it's going to be the FP5. So in order to keep local control, we need to pass Measure Q.
Okay, so your contention is essentially that if it doesn't pass, then you're likely going to lose your fire department to the county. There'll be an annexation. The county will take over fire services, and the fire prevention zone is going to come down on you with that tax anyway. Absolutely.
Now it's not. I'm not guessing. It's going to happen. I sit in city council meetings all the time, and the current city council has stated that if Measure Q doesn't pass, they don't have another choice but to annex our fire department. So it will happen. We do have 2 city council seats open. It's like a split, some are for it, some are against Measure Q, but either way, 3 of the current council have already stated, and those seats will remain. 3 out of the 5 will annex our fire department because the city just can't afford it anymore.
For somebody, this is my last question, for somebody that is still like on the fence about voting yes or no, what would you tell them?
I would tell them, take a look at your family and see what the future of Barstow holds for them. This is really a tax for the betterment of Barstow all the way around, from our public services to our streets to our children's activities to our seniors' activities. Look at the 5-year plans that your city leaders have put into place. Read the resolution and the ordinance. Look at what is in there protecting the money. Don't just go off a Facebook post. I am just so over the Facebook thing right now that people can say whatever they want. Facebook isn't true. Look at what's in black and white in front of you and think about your family's future. If you plan on making a life in Barstow, look to the future, not to the past.
I have to agree with you there, Billy. I feel like we got to be a little bit more responsible and educate a little bit more once we see posts on Facebook, Instagram, any social media platform. We definitely have to read a little bit more and get educated a little bit more.
I like that. I'm over Facebook.
It's not true, but no, I did a lot of research. I have some great committee members, and we've started a Facebook page ourselves. So with respect to Facebook, we try to stick to the facts as we know them. We've also started a Facebook or a website, www.yesonmeasureq.com. with links to articles such as the FC5 articles and different things that the supervisors are doing, as well as the county fire chief. And the resolution and ordinance are there. So I encourage everybody to educate themselves and to think about their families going into the future.
Fantastic, Billy. We want to definitely thank you for your time and calling in and giving us your Measure Q support reasons and sharing that with us here on U-Turn. And before our show, like we mentioned here, we definitely do spin for charity here on U-Turn. So being that you shared your time with us, we definitely want to spin for charity for you. So you could pick your favorite charity that you would like for us to donate some money. So we're going to spin the wheel.
Okay.
And what does that land on, Tom?
It was 1,500.
1,500. Nice. Is there a charity off the top of your head that you work with that you would like this money to be funded to?
Absolutely. I hate to plug something else on your show, but I have been selected Barstow's High Desert Diva. I'm raising money for Barstow's Relay for Life 2019, so that would be amazing to donate that $1,500 to them.
Fantastic. So there you go. We'll go ahead and stay in touch with you to make sure we give that out to your organization. And thank you again so much for being here with us on U-Turn Radio.
All right. Thanks for calling me, and I look forward to listening to the entire show.
Fantastic.
Thanks
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. So that was Billy Braun, who supports Measure Q. Like we said, it's a 1% tax sales tax increase, mainly out of Barstow, like we mentioned, right?
Right.
So why don't we do this? We'll cut into a commercial break,
Okay.
and then we will come back with hopefully our second guest, Dr. Paul Courtney, who opposes Measure Q, and then we can listen to his point of view and go from there and see what you guys think. And really what we're trying to do is bring awareness to this measure, and we want to share pros and cons so we can make educated decisions and not just go off of a Facebook post. I really like that. All right, we're going to take a commercial. We'll be back with more U-Turn.
We'll be right back to U-Turn after this commercial break. Don't go away. How would you feel if you had to make a choice between buying food or spending your fixed income on life-saving medicine? No one should make that trade-off, but many low-income seniors are forced into difficult decisions like this every day. Smiles for Seniors Foundation provides energy assistance and safety net services to struggling low-income seniors in the Inland Empire. They provide one-time assistance to seniors to meet specific financial needs. They've helped with food, housing, utility payments, minor home and auto repairs, along with life-saving prescriptions or medical equipment. A nonprofit foundation funded entirely by donations from local organizations. Smiles for Seniors receives no funding from the state or federal government. They are funded by local businesses and individuals like you with big hearts and willing wallets. You can find more information or to donate to Smile for Seniors at 909-790-6671. That's 909-790-6671, or visit smilesforseniorsfoundation.org. That's smilesforseniorsfoundation.org.
The Humane Society of San Bernardino Valley, protecting animals for more than 4 decades. The Humane Society's mission is to prevent cruelty and neglect to animals and to provide for the health and well-being of animals with an emphasis on spay or neuter programs to prevent pet overpopulation. Visit the Humane Society of San Bernardino Valley for your pet's medical needs, 909-386-1400, or visit hssbv.org. The Humane Society of San Bernardino Valley, a leading nonprofit organization in caring for all animals in need. The House of Ruth has been providing life-saving domestic violence services since 1977. Participation in House of Ruth programming is open to all battered women, men, and children. Domestic violence is a public health issue. 1 in 4 women are abused by their partner, and it's 1 in 7 for men. Even 1 in 3 teens are exposed to dating violence in their relationships. If you or someone you know needs help or support, House of Ruth can help. Call the House of Ruth 24-hour crisis hotline, 877-988-5559, or visit their website, houseofruthinc.org. Come soar with us. We're Zip Lines, located in the San Gabriel Mountains, right next to Mountain High Ski Resort. We offer the thrill of a lifetime, zipping through one of our 2 zip courses that are literally built in the trees. Our Canopy Tour is one of the most ambitious zip line courses in the nation, offering heights of up to 300 feet above the forest floor and lengths of over 1,500 feet. Our mountaintop tour provides another amazing zip line experience and, as a bonus, a very unique experience. Imagine leaping off a tree platform in a controlled free fall. Now, imagine doing it twice. These are not for the faint of heart, but we know you have the right stuff to soar with us. For further information, please visit our website at ziplinesPC.com. That's ziplinesPC.com. You can make sure we hold a place for you by selecting your tour package and date online. That's ziplinesPC.com. Come soar with us.
Tom, Nadia, and Eric are back with more only on the U-Turn Radio Show right here on KCAA.
Welcome back to U-Turn Radio. Great show today. We have a lot of information going on today. We, at the top of the show, if you missed it, we covered FP5 and pretty much how that meeting went over this past Tuesday, and then we jumped over to tax increase by 1% in Barstow.
Sales tax, right?
Yeah, we had Billy Braun, who shared her opinion and why she supports Measure Q. We're trying to get a hold of Dr. Paul Courtney, who opposes Measure Q, so he can share his opinion and tell us why he opposes. That way we get
Dr. Courtney, if you're listening, 909-792-5222.
That's right.
909-792-5222 is the call-in line.
Absolutely. So just in case if we don't hear from him, we'll put something together so we could get like a different opinion we next show or something.
Well, actually, I mean, there's some stuff we can go ahead and address as we go along. And remember, we are a show that's kind of dedicated to big-hearted communities, small government. So, the immediate question as a small government advocate that I would ask is, what's driving your costs?
Right.
The city is not unfunded.
Right.
A city's revenues come from two different sources. There's some other fees and that type of thing, but in general, 2 sources. You have property tax, right? The 1% property tax.
Right.
And then you have sales tax, right? So this measure is an increase, if you will, in that sales tax. So I think these numbers are close, if not accurate. So, you go, you buy something, and you get a sales tax on it, right? Mm-hmm. I believe 7.5% of that goes to the state.
How much percent, you said?
Let me look that up. But anyway, a portion of that
goes
to the state, right? And they spend it on something. And then a portion of that goes back to the city, if you will. So my point here is they're not unfunded. They got money coming in.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Real estate values obviously are a huge driver of that amount. So as the economy does better, as the price of homes increases, the median price of a home, that drives any government entity in California, that drives their revenue up. So they make more money as the price of real estate goes up because it turns into a higher assessment and therefore a better tax from the government perspective. So the government's making more money as real estate goes up. So, over the past couple of years, I mean, I'm not sure exactly about Barstow itself, but certainly California over the past few years, real estate values have gone up. So revenues have gone up for all government entities. So my first question as a small government advocate would be to ask, what have you done with the extra revenues from your 1% property tax? That would be one question. And then the other question I would have is kind of again give me some detail in terms of your cost, and it's really interesting that these things overlap. FP5 and Barstow overlap, right? Billy is hoping that this is approved so that they can save their fire department. They can save local control of the fire department. But the question is, why? I mean, what's happening with their fire department that they can't afford it?
Right. I thought that was an interesting point as far as FP5 and Measure Q, and obviously that it's applicable to Barstow, which I found it interesting. I was like, oh wow, well one of them is going to have to happen at some point, I feel like.
Right.
So that was a great point that she did bring up that I didn't think of.
Yeah, and the I think the key thing there is to kind of dig into the cost. If I were living in Barstow, first thing I would do is sit down. Okay, what's driving cost?
Right.
And I did some quick looking, and these are going to be kind of rough estimates. I think Billy mentioned that they're running like a $400,000 deficit.
Right.
In the fire district in Barstow right now.
Real quick, let me welcome Eric. He's on the phone. Hi, Eric.
Hey, Nadia. It's Tom.
Oh, he did call in. All right.
Yeah, we have you live. Indirect, you are live with us.
Eric is our third co-host, and he's dialing in.
Hey, are we sure that I'm not blocking that line for the gentleman calling in that you were expecting?
No. The line can handle, I think, up to 3 callers at once.
Yeah, you're
good. Eric, do you have a comment? Something you want to kick in there?
No, I think I think what was missing from the conversation with the guests in the first part of the show was, any look at 2 things. One is what's driving the cost, what you're talking about, and a discussion of how their revenues, I'm pretty sure, got to be increasing anyway, and what's happening is their costs are increasing faster than their revenues. And in most cities, that's a result of, deferred compensation plans and stuff like that exceed what the private sector has. And then the other thing to consider there is there really wasn't any discussion I heard about what the budget or what this bill to increase the sales tax called for in terms of spending. It kind of sounded like it called for it to be spent in Barstow, but then it would be turned over for the city council and city manager to dictate where it was spent, and as long as they spent it in accordance with how those people spent it, this audit would come back and tell them that, and that's as much control there was over the spending going for. And so that when it's turned over to that city council, then that's turning it over to the political side of things, where builders and public employee unions and people like that can exercise a whole lot of control over what's done. I didn't hear anything when it said that anything they did with it after it got out of that sausage factory was going to be wrong. It was just they had to expend it with how the city council wanted to. But I think you started talking about that, Tom, when you're talking about the increase in property values and why those increases wouldn't outfund what they're doing. And the other thing would be, when we had Jeff Hewitt on, he talked about another kind of remote desert community, which Barstow is to some extent. Certainly it's bigger than Blythe, but it certainly shares some characteristics. And Blythe runs their fire department for somewhere in the order of 10 to 15% of the cost of County Fire in San Bernardino, from what I can tell, or what County Fire San Bernardino says it costs them to run it. And they have 6 people responding on average for every called event because they use local volunteers. And that's what's missing in all these fire departments. It's, we have to have paid professionals, but for a lot of years, most of that work was done by volunteers or even paid volunteers, and in most states it's still done that way. And it doesn't mean that there's a drop-off in service. In this case, you could argue that there's, I think they require 2 people to respond in San Bernardino that they're trying to up it to 3, but they already have 6 up in Blythe for 15% of the cost. So I think there's an argument that you can get better service by looking at this stuff a little bit different. And people don't do that because they're some of the things you just heard where, the fire department came and helped somebody I know. And that's their business, so they're always going to get the benefit of the doubt there. And everybody always going to think, hey, I might need them someday to do the same for me. So they have a built-in goodwill, if you would say, that can translate. If somebody's not standing up and saying, hey, wait a second, that can translate into compensating more than is required for the functions that they do.
Yeah, and we have the other, I guess, model, if you will, of Calamasa. Jeff Hewitt, which you mentioned, who's running for supervisor over in Riverside County. He as mayor, he recognized the writing on the wall, knew that fire services were going to break the city, so he came up with an alternative solution. It took him a lot of effort, that type of thing, but basically he took his fire services, if you will, not private, but into the city, readjusted their pension plan, and kept the city, on good footing. And from all reports, fire services out there are very good.
Yeah.
And he has a workforce that, we talked to him about that's happy to have the job. I mean, they have 1,000 applicants for every position in fire services or something. From what he said, we looked at something, Tom, that said they had 9,000 applicants in the first 2 minutes when they opened a position. I think it was in L.A. County. But there's a tremendous amount of demand for these jobs, and it's not being reflected in the price that's paid for them. Now, some of that, in Jeff's situation, the real increase was they were at $1.4 million for the budget for their town, and then the county fire came in and said you have to increase the number of people that you have on an engine responding to a call from 2 to 3, which means you had to increase your staffing by 1/2 again of what you're spending right now. So they were going to go from 1.4 to 2.1 million. And it wasn't something that Jeff discovered. It was simply a matter of being faced with 2.1 million that was not budgeted before, just because the fire people were coming and saying, now we're going to require you to do this, and they couldn't afford it, so they had to find a solution. And there's 2 things that are happening that are driving up the cost of these fire services and first responder services, and one of them is mandated requirements that you have to do this and you have to do that, and firemen can only do this, that seem to be coming to some degree from the state, to some degree from the different counties. And the other is just the long-term effect of having big defined benefit pension plans and people living longer. So the original estimates when they funded those things don't hold any longer, and having losses within those pension plans because how they invest them is not necessarily a very controlled thing as well. So they have losses within them. People live longer, and the effect of that is, that accounts for about 17% in the budgets that we've looked at for these fire services. And so it's not pay as you go. It's just paying for the long-term effects of promised benefits has grown to be 17% in some of the budgets we've looked at. And we would contend they still are underestimating those amounts grossly.
I have a question. Now thinking about it, FP5, if they agree, and that becomes a tax fee, right, of $157, Barstow's part of that, right? If they pass that?
No, right now Barstow has their own fire district. So if you will,
what's happening in San Bernardino County, which Barstow is part of, is that a number of cities like Barstow, Hesperia, it started with San Bernardino City when they were bankrupt because they had too great a cost in their fire department. They didn't control it. They went bankrupt. The county fire stepped in and saw a benefit in taking that on. It wouldn't be something you would ordinarily think they would want to do, but they took it on, got it run through the supervisors in the county, and that's where the responsibility for that lies. But after that, other areas like Hesperia have looked at it and said, well, this is going to bankrupt us, let's dump it on the county. And that's what she's telling you Barstow has looked at and said, we can't afford it, let's dump it on the county. But those costs don't go away. I mean, the only way those costs are going to go away is if you have a different way of doing something that costs less. And the county's taking them on and just saying, well, we'll find the ways to pay for it and keep this going. And that's what FP5 is the start of.
Right. No, and that it's what's interesting to me is that at least Barstow's being honest. And what I mean by that is, Billy laid out, hey, basically we want this tax because we want to improve the cities. One of those things is keeping local control of the fire services. Read an op-ed from the Sacramento Bee that there's, I mentioned earlier, there's 254 local tax increases on the ballot across the state in November 6th. And what's not being told in a lot of cases is the truth. And the truth is those are there to pay for increased government pension obligations. They get marketed differently. It's fire protection, police protection,
roads,
roads, that type of thing. But if you dig into
they're hitting every little thing they can, the gas, the sales tax, the property, wherever they can get it. But there's one elephant in the room, and that is the government cannot afford to pay as they go for what they're promising their employees. With the revenues that they have. So they only have the choice of reining that in, finding a more efficient way of doing something which is politically painful for them to do, or go find more revenue. And they're not being honest in their efforts to go get more revenue. We've seen that.
And I do appreciate that about, obviously as a small government kind of anti-tax guy, I wouldn't come down on the yes vote if I was living in Barstow. But I do appreciate that at least there's honesty in Barstow, and the proponents are saying we want to do this because we want to maintain local control. However, I would encourage them to dig deeper and say, wow, we're paying almost 90%. I think I looked at almost 90% of our fire costs go to pay and benefits.
All right. I kind of want to share the ballot question as how it's going to be presented for the Measure Q.
Okay, yeah.
The way that it's being presented, it's to provide funding for 911 emergency response times, fire protection, paramedic services, police services, neighborhood patrols, gang, drugs, and crime prevention, maintaining streets, parks, senior youth programs. Shall the city of Barstow adopt or ordinance to increase the sales tax by 1%, providing $7 million annually paid by visitors and residents, requiring resident oversight, independent audits, expiring if local police or fire services are transferred to another agency. That's how the ballot question is being presented for Measure Q, the one sales tax increase.
Yeah, which those descriptions are supposed to be neutral, and that was fairly neutral. But as you read through that, they emphasize that visitors are going to be paying for it, which at the end of the day, I'd kind of struggle with that interpretation because a visitor drives into town and runs his credit card through the cash machine of the local merchant. It's not the visitor that's paying the tax.
Right.
It's coming out of the local merchant's pocketbook. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's money that local merchant has earned that the city government is now saying we want a larger piece of your pie. True.
Well, Eric, do you have any last comments? We have 1 minute left before we wrap up here. So.
No, did you do that thing with the House of Ruth? Have you done your walk run yet?
Absolutely, we were definitely there live and direct for both of the days. So yeah, we definitely were out there volunteering our time with the House of Ruth. But it was actually really fun. We'll send you the videos. That's gonna wrap it up for us. That was Measure Q sales tax by 1% and out of Barstow. Thank you so much to our guest, Billy Braun. Thank you guys for tuning in. U-Turn Radio.
And we missed you, Dr. Courtney.
We definitely did, Doctor.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, and now 102.3 FM.
Your NBC